In the small town of Oak Ridge, there was nothing remarkable about the daily routine. The streets were quiet, the houses neat and orderly, and everyone knew everyone else's name. Oak Ridge was the kind of place where people could feel safe, where nothing ever seemed out of the ordinary. People lived their lives, worked their jobs, and went home to their families. But deep beneath the surface, there was something waiting to be discovered, a secret that would shake everything the townsfolk thought they knew about their history. It all began on an ordinary Tuesday. Eleanor, the town librarian, was sorting through old books in the archive room. She was always the one to handle the more tedious tasks, from repairing worn-out books to organizing dusty old files that no one had looked at in years. But that particular day, she came across something that caught her eye. It wasn't a book or a letter or a file like she had expected. It was a small unmarked folder tucked away in the back of an old filing cabinet. The folder looked out of place, as if it hadn't been touched in decades. Curious, Eleanor pulled the folder out and set it on the desk. She opened it carefully, her fingers brushing the yellowed edges of the paper inside. There was no title on the folder, only a strange code, 03261. No one in town had ever seen such a code, and Eleanor's curiosity grew stronger by the second. She turned the first page, her eyes scanning the faded handwriting. It appeared to be a journal, but the writing was unlike anything she had ever seen in the town's records. The handwriting was clear and precise, almost as if the writer knew their words would one day be read by someone else. As Eleanor read through the pages, she began to uncover strange references to something hidden within the town. The writer mentioned odd symbols, a series of maps, and coded messages. There were references to a secret that had been passed down for generations, a secret that was meant to be kept hidden at all costs. The code 03261 was mentioned repeatedly, but there was no explanation. What did it mean? Why had it been hidden away in this folder, forgotten for so long? Her mind raced with questions. Who had written this journal, and why had it been left behind in such an obscure place? What was the significance of the code, and what secrets were buried beneath Oak Ridge's quiet surface? Eleanor knew she couldn't keep this discovery to herself. She had to tell someone, but who? She thought about approaching the mayor or perhaps the town historian. But something told her this was bigger than what either of them could handle. She decided to start by talking to a few of the townspeople, people she trusted. Maybe they knew something, or perhaps they could help her make sense of what she had uncovered. The first person she spoke to was Benjamin, the local handyman who had lived in Oak Ridge his whole life. He had a reputation for knowing the history of the town better than anyone else. If there were secrets hidden in Oak Ridge, Benjamin would be the one to know about them. When Eleanor showed him the journal and the code, Benjamin was silent for a long time. He took the journal from her hands, flipping through the pages slowly, his brow furrowing as he read the cryptic words. Finally, he looked up at her, his face serious. "I've heard of the code before," he said quietly, "but I thought it was just a rumor, something that had been lost to time. I never thought anyone would actually find it." Eleanor's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? What is it?" Benjamin hesitated, clearly torn. "There are stories, old stories, passed down by word of mouth. They say the code was linked to the town's founding, that it's part of something much bigger than any of us, but there's always been a warning. Whoever discovers the secret hidden behind that code will be forced to make a choice that could change everything for Oak Ridge." Eleanor felt a chill run down her spine. What choice? And what secret could possibly be worth such a warning? Before she could ask more questions, Benjamin stood up and walked toward the window, staring out at the town. "You're not the first to find this," he said, "but you might be the first to truly understand what it means." Eleanor left Benjamin's house feeling both excited and apprehensive. She didn't know what to make of his words, but one thing was certain. The discovery of the 03261 code was just the beginning. She had to find out more. She needed to know what the town's founders had hidden, and why they had gone to such great lengths to keep it secret. She decided to continue her investigation on her own, starting with the town archives. She had already uncovered a piece of the puzzle, but there had to be more. There had to be more documents, more clues that would lead her to the truth. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that Oak Ridge's peaceful appearance might be a facade, hiding something far more complex and possibly dangerous. The next morning, Eleanor returned to the library. She wasn't sure where to begin, but she knew she had to dig deeper. She spent hours combing through old records, looking for anything that could explain the code and its connection to the town's past. As she sifted through the papers, she found something that caught her eye. An old map, faded and torn at the edges. The map depicted the town of Oak Ridge, but there was something strange about it. Certain areas of the map were marked with odd symbols, symbols she had seen mentioned in the journal. The map was a key. She could feel it. Eleanor decided to follow the trail. She didn't know where it would lead, but she had no intention of turning back now. She had already come this far, and there was no going back. She started by visiting the locations marked on the map. Each place she visited seemed ordinary at first, but as she looked closer, she began to notice subtle details that seemed out of place. An abandoned house that had been forgotten by time, an overgrown garden that once may have been a place of importance, and even the town square, where the stones beneath her feet seemed to whisper of a past long buried. With each step, Eleanor uncovered more about the town's hidden history, and the more she learned, the more she realized that the truth was far more complicated than she had ever imagined. The code 03261 was not just a number. It was a gateway to something far bigger, something that had been kept secret for generations. And as she uncovered the secrets of Oak Ridge, Eleanor knew one thing for certain. Her life would never be the same again. The more Eleanor delved into the mystery of 03261, the deeper the rabbit hole seemed to go. She had hoped the first discovery would lead to answers, but instead it opened a door to more questions, more enigmas than she could have imagined. Each day spent digging through the old town records, old maps, and forgotten journals only confirmed that Oak Ridge's peaceful appearance was a cover for something hidden beneath the surface. She wasn't just dealing with forgotten history, she was unraveling a web of secrets that had been carefully guarded for generations. Eleanor's next step was to trace the history of the town itself. If the code 03261 was linked to Oak Ridge's founders, perhaps understanding the people who built the town would help shed light on its true purpose. She began her research in the local library, scanning old newspapers, town records, and any other documents she could find that mentioned the town's founding. The earliest records she found were dated back over a century, when Oak Ridge was nothing more than a few scattered cabins along a river. It was hard to imagine how such a small, quiet place could have any secrets, let alone a hidden code that could change everything. But as Eleanor read on, she learned about the founding families. Families who had come to Oak Ridge with dreams of building something greater, something that would outlast them. These families had formed the heart of Oak Ridge's early society, creating laws, building homes, and establishing businesses. But one name kept popping up in her research, an enigmatic figure who seemed to have played a pivotal role in the town's creation. There was no record of this person's full name, only a cryptic signature at the bottom of the original town charter. The signature was a simple RC. Eleanor tried to dig deeper, but there were no more details about the identity of this mysterious figure. No one knew who RC was or why their name had been deliberately erased from history. The only clue left behind was the strange symbol etched into the bottom corner of the charter, a symbol that looked strikingly similar to the ones she had seen on the old maps. The same symbols that were marked on the map she had found in the library. Could RC be connected to the code? Eleanor's instincts told her yes, but she couldn't figure out how. She began to feel as though she was on the edge of discovering something monumental, something that could change everything. The more she investigated, the more she realized that Oak Ridge's founders had left behind a trail of clues, deliberately hidden in plain sight. This wasn't just about a code, it was about a legacy, a secret buried deep in the town's roots. Determined to follow the trail, Eleanor visited the old town square, where the founders of Oak Ridge had once gathered. She felt a sense of reverence as she stood in the same place where history had been made. The square was empty, save for a few people walking by, oblivious to the significance of the place. Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The town seemed quiet, almost too quiet, as though something was waiting to be uncovered. She made her way to the town hall, the oldest building in Oak Ridge. The building had always been the heart of the community, where important decisions were made and where the town's history was recorded. She had visited it many times before, but today it felt different. There was a sense of urgency in the air, a weight on her shoulders that made her feel as though she were on the brink of discovering something monumental. The town hall was closed for the day, but the caretaker was there, sweeping the floors. Eleanor introduced herself and asked if she could take a look around. The caretaker, an elderly woman named Mrs. Phelps, gave her a wary look but agreed. She led Eleanor through the darkened hallways, past rows of old portraits and dusty shelves filled with records. At the back of the hall, Mrs. Phelps stopped in front of a locked door. "This room is off limits," she said, her voice low. "It's been closed for years." Eleanor was taken aback. "Why?" Mrs. Phelps hesitated, glancing over her shoulder. "It's just old, full of records that no one's ever looked at. Some say it's better to leave things as they are." Eleanor's curiosity flared. "May I see inside?" The old woman shook her head. "It's not a good idea. Some things are better left forgotten." But Eleanor wasn't going to back down now. The code 03261 had led her this far, and she knew she had to keep going. She gently pressed the woman, and after a long pause, Mrs. Phelps sighed and retrieved a key from her apron. "You'll regret this," she muttered as she unlocked the door. Inside, the room was even darker than the rest of the town hall, with only a few rays of light filtering through the dusty windows. The air was thick with the smell of old paper and leather, and as Eleanor stepped inside, she felt as though she had entered a time capsule, a place frozen in history. Mrs. Phelps stayed near the doorway, watching quietly as Eleanor moved deeper into the room. There were rows upon rows of filing cabinets, each one crammed with documents. Some of the papers were yellowed with age, others were still in pristine condition, their ink as sharp as the day they had been written. But it was one cabinet in particular that caught Eleanor's eye. The cabinet was locked, but it wasn't the usual lock. It had a strange, intricate mechanism, one that reminded her of the symbol she had seen on the town charter, the same symbol that had appeared on the maps. She ran her fingers over the lock, feeling the patterns carved into it. There was something familiar about it, as if it held the key to something larger than she could understand. "Can I help you with that?" Mrs. Phelps asked, her voice breaking the silence. Eleanor looked up. "Do you know anything about this lock?" The old woman shook her head. "It's been there as long as I can remember. I've never been able to open it." Eleanor was about to ask more when something caught her eye, a small, worn-out notebook on a nearby table. She picked it up and opened the first page. The handwriting inside was familiar. It was the same handwriting she had seen in the journal she had found in the library. This was it. The missing piece. The notebook contained a series of notes, drawings, and symbols that matched the ones she had seen in the town records. The notes mentioned something called the Vault, a hidden chamber beneath the town hall that held the town's greatest secret. The code 3261 was part of a larger puzzle, a key to unlocking this hidden treasure. As Eleanor read through the notebook, her heart raced. She now knew what she had to do. The vault was real. The code 03261 was the key to unlocking it. But what was inside? What had the founders of Oak Ridge hidden away all these years? She had no answers yet, but she was closer than ever. The puzzle was coming together, and Eleanor knew she had to uncover the truth before it was too late. Eleanor felt the weight of the notebook in her hands as if it were a message from the past, one that demanded to be understood. Her heart raced with each page she turned, and the more she read, the more she realized the significance of the discovery she had made. The vault hidden beneath the town hall. It was real, and the code 03261 was the key to unlocking it. She stared at the notebook, tracing the worn pages with her fingers. Each page was filled with symbols and notes, but one thing stood out above all else. There were clear instructions on how to open the vault. The code 3261 was not just a random set of numbers. It was a precise sequence, a pattern that would activate the hidden mechanism buried beneath Oak Ridge's oldest building. But there was a problem. The instructions weren't complete. The last few pages of the notebook were missing, torn away, leaving only fragments behind. Eleanor's heart sank. The final pieces of the puzzle were gone. She could feel her frustration rising, but she quickly pushed it aside. She had come too far to give up now. The vault was within her reach, and she had to find the missing pages, whatever it took. Eleanor turned to Mrs. Phelps, who had been watching her silently from the doorway. "Do you know where I can find the rest of this notebook?" she asked, her voice tinged with desperation. The old woman shook her head, her expression unreadable. "I don't know what you're looking for, but the town has always been full of secrets. Some things are better left buried." Eleanor didn't listen. She had already made up her mind. She needed the missing pages, and she needed them now. There was no time to waste. The vault was waiting, and with each passing moment the mystery grew larger, more urgent. After a few moments of silence, Eleanor made a decision. She would go deeper into Oakridge's history, seeking out anyone who might have knowledge of the missing pages. She would talk to the older townsfolk, anyone who had lived in Oakridge long enough to remember the secrets that had been buried for generations. She left the town hall with a new sense of purpose. Her first stop was the home of Mr. Whitaker, a man in his late 80s who had lived in Oakridge his entire life. He was one of the few remaining people who had seen the town's transformation from a small settlement to the quiet community it was today. If anyone knew about the hidden history of Oakridge, it was him. Mr. Whitaker's house sat at the edge of town, overlooking the woods that stretched beyond the town's borders. The house was old, its paint chipped and faded, but it had a charm about it that made it seem like it belonged in another era. Eleanor knocked on the door, and after a moment it creaked open. "Ah, Eleanor, what brings you here?" Mr. Whitaker asked, his voice raspy from years of disuse. "I need to ask you about something, Mr. Whitaker," Eleanor said. "Something important. Do you know anything about the vault beneath the town hall?" Mr. Whitaker's eyes narrowed as he looked her up and down. He paused for a moment as if weighing the decision to speak. Then he stepped aside, motioning for Eleanor to come in. "You're digging up old ghosts," he said, his voice quieter now. "Some things are better left alone, child." Eleanor hesitated but stepped inside. "I know about the code 03261. I have the instructions, but part of it is missing." "Do you know anything about the missing pages?" Mr. Whitaker's face paled slightly, and he motioned for Eleanor to sit. "I've heard the stories, yes, but what you're asking about, it's dangerous knowledge. The vault, the code, it's all tied to things that should never be disturbed." Eleanor leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "What's in the vault?" For a moment Mr. Whitaker said nothing. He stared at her, his old eyes clouded with memories, before finally speaking. "Long ago, the founders of this town, your ancestors, Eleanor, created Oakridge as a place of peace. But they also built something else. Something powerful, something that could change the world. They hid it in the vault beneath the town hall, and made sure that only the right people would ever find it." Eleanor's pulse quickened. "What is it?" "What's in the vault?" he sighed. "That's the problem. No one really knows. The founders kept it a secret, and over time, the knowledge of what's inside was lost. The code, the vault, it was all meant to stay hidden. But over the years, there have been whispers. Rumors of people trying to find it, trying to open it. Every time someone gets close, something goes wrong. There are stories of people disappearing, of strange occurrences that no one can explain. Some say the vault is cursed." Eleanor swallowed hard. "So the vault holds something dangerous?" Mr. Whitaker nodded slowly. "It's not just about treasure or riches. It's something far more dangerous. The founders of Oakridge were protecting something that could change the course of history. But they didn't want just anyone to find it. They wanted someone who could be trusted with it. And that's where the code comes in. If you can decode it, if you can unlock the vault, you will find what they were trying to keep hidden." Eleanor stood up, her mind racing. "How do I find the missing pages?" "The notebook is incomplete. I need those pages to open the vault." Mr. Whitaker looked at her gravely. "There's one person who might know where the missing pages are," he said softly. "Her name is Clara. She's lived here longer than anyone, and she has a memory like no other. But she's been living in isolation away from the town for many years. You won't find her easily." Eleanor's heart raced. Clara. The name felt like a key to the puzzle. "Where can I find her?" Mr. Whitaker hesitated, then pointed to the woods behind his house. "Follow the old trail through the trees. It's a long walk, but it will lead you to her cottage. She's the last person who knows the full story." Eleanor thanked Mr. Whitaker and left his house, her mind buzzing with questions. Clara. She had to find her. The missing pages were out there, and Clara held the key. With determination in her step, Eleanor ventured into the woods, following the narrow trail that wound through the trees. The path was overgrown, the trees towering above her like silent sentinels. The deeper she went, the quieter it became, until all she could hear was the sound of her own breath and the rustle of leaves beneath her feet. The forest seemed to hold its breath, as if it too was waiting for the secrets to be revealed. Finally, after what felt like hours, she came upon a small cottage nestled between the trees. It was old, with ivy creeping up its stone walls, but it looked well cared for. Eleanor knocked on the door, her heart pounding in her chest. After a moment, the door creaked open and an elderly woman appeared in the doorway. She was tall, with long gray hair tied back in a loose braid, and her eyes were sharp, though they held a kindness that made Eleanor feel at ease. "You must be Eleanor," the woman said, her voice soft but firm. "I've been expecting you." The woman in front of Eleanor looked at her with a knowing gaze as if she had been waiting for this moment for years. Eleanor, still trying to catch her breath after the long walk, felt an unsettling sense of being in the right place at the right time, but also like she was intruding on something much bigger than herself. "You've been searching for the vault," the woman said quietly, her voice carrying a calm weight, "and you've found more than you bargained for." Eleanor nodded, unsure of how to respond. "How did you know?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman smiled gently. "The town has its secrets, Eleanor, and some of us have been watching, waiting for someone to unlock them." Eleanor's heart quickened. She had so many questions, but she was unsure of where to begin. "I need to know more about the vault, the code. What's in it? And where are the missing pages of the notebook?" The woman motioned for Eleanor to sit on the weathered wooden bench just outside her cottage. The sunlight filtered through the trees, casting a soft glow on the surroundings. Despite the beauty of the forest and the peaceful atmosphere, Eleanor could feel a tension in the air, as if every step forward was leading her closer to something monumental. "I know what you're seeking," the woman said. "My name is Clara, and I've seen this all before." Eleanor leaned forward, her eyes wide with anticipation. "What do you mean?" Clara studied her for a moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. Then she began to speak, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "Many years ago, I was part of the town's council. I helped build Oak Ridge just like your ancestors. But there were things they didn't want the world to know, things they couldn't allow anyone to understand. The vault wasn't just a storage space, it was a safeguard, designed to protect something that could change everything." Eleanor felt a chill run down her spine. She had always thought the town was peaceful because of its history, its people, and the simplicity of life there, but now it seemed as if Oak Ridge had been built on something far darker, something hidden away in the very ground they walked on. "What's inside the vault?" Eleanor asked again, her voice trembling with urgency. Clara looked out toward the forest, her gaze distant as if she were remembering something long past. "It's a device," she said, "a creation of unimaginable power, one that the founders believed would shape the future of the world. But they also feared what it could become in the wrong hands, so they sealed it away, hoping it would be forgotten. But over the years there have been whispers, and the code 03261 is the key to unlocking it." Eleanor's mind raced. "What does the device do?" Clara turned her gaze back to her. "That's the part no one truly knows. The founders themselves didn't fully understand it. They only knew that it was dangerous, powerful, and capable of things that no one should have control over." A heavy silence filled the space between them. Eleanor felt as though she were standing on the edge of an abyss, about to peer into something she might not be able to comprehend. Why was the notebook torn? Why are the pages missing? Clara sighed deeply. "Some of us tried to keep the truth hidden. The last remnants of the town's council feared that the device would be discovered one day, and so they made sure that only those worthy of the secret would ever find it. The pages were removed to ensure that only a select few could continue the search." "But you found them, didn't you?" she asked, her eyes searching Eleanor's face. Eleanor nodded. "I found the code. I found the instructions. But they're incomplete. There's something more, something I need to understand." Clara studied her for a long moment. "The vault is not just a place. It's a test, a trial. The founders created it so that only the most worthy could access what was inside. The missing pages of the notebook contain the final part of the code, the part that will determine who can open the vault and who will be kept out." Eleanor felt a weight in her chest. "So what happens if I can't complete the code? What if I can't open it?" Clara's face softened, but her words were solemn. "If you fail, the vault will remain closed forever. And perhaps that's for the best. Not everyone is meant to wield such power. But if you succeed, Eleanor, if you unlock the vault, you will have the knowledge and power to change the world." Eleanor struggled to process the enormity of Clara's words. "But what if I can't handle it? What if I make the wrong choice?" Clara's eyes locked with hers. "That's the true test. The code was created not just to open a door, but to test the heart of the person who seeks it. If your intentions are pure, if your heart is strong enough, you will be able to unlock it. But if not, The rest of Clara's words hung in the air unsaid. There was no need to finish the sentence. The consequences were clear. Eleanor stood up, her mind in turmoil. She had always thought of Oak Ridge as a simple town, a quiet place where life moved slowly and people cared for one another. But now it seemed as if Oak Ridge was built on a foundation of mystery, a mystery that had been buried for generations. The vault was not just a secret of the past, it was a living, breathing force that could change the future. And Eleanor was standing at the threshold ready to unlock it. "I have to find the missing pages," she said, more to herself than to Clara. "I have to finish this. I have to know what's in the vault." Clara nodded. "You're not the first to seek the vault, Eleanor. Many before you have tried, and many have failed. But something about you is different. I can feel it. You're the one who will either unlock Oak Ridge's greatest secret or keep it locked away forever." Eleanor felt a surge of determination. She couldn't stop now. She had come too far. The town's past was intertwined with her own. The vault, the code, it was all part of her destiny, and no matter what lay ahead, she had to know the truth. "Where do I find the missing pages?" Eleanor asked, her voice firm. Clara hesitated for a moment, then stood up from the bench. She led Eleanor to a small table by the window, where an old map lay unfurled. The map showed Oak Ridge as it was centuries ago, with symbols marking certain locations around the town. Places that Eleanor now understood were connected to the code in the vault. "There are 4 places," Clara said, her finger tracing the map. 4 locations that hold the final pieces of the puzzle. The first is at the old mill by the river. The second is at the chapel on the hill. The third is deep in the forest where the old oak tree stands. And the fourth—" Clara's voice faltered. "The fourth is in the heart of the town, in the place where the founders once gathered." Eleanor took in the information, committing it to memory. She had no idea what she would find at these locations, but she knew one thing. Time was running out. She had to act quickly before someone else uncovered the truth and used it for their own gain. "Thank you, Clara," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "I won't let you down." Clara smiled softly. "I believe in you, Eleanor. But remember, the code is not just about unlocking the vault. It's about unlocking your own heart, your own strength. The vault will test you. Make sure you're ready." With Clara's words echoing in her mind, Eleanor set out once again, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The vault was calling to her, and she was determined to answer. Eleanor stood at the edge of the forest, the wind carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. She had spent the better part of the morning preparing herself for the task ahead. Clara's words weighed heavily on her mind. The vault, the code, the power that lay buried beneath Oak Ridge, it was all so overwhelming. But there was no turning back now. She had to know what was hidden, no matter the cost. The first location on Clara's map was the old mill by the river. Eleanor had passed the mill many times during her childhood, always hearing the faint hum of the water wheel turning. But she never imagined that it held any significant meaning. Now, standing at the foot of the forest, she realized that this mill, like everything else in Oak Ridge, was part of something much bigger, something that had been hidden for generations. As Eleanor made her way through the dense woods, she couldn't help but feel like she was being watched. The trees, tall and ancient, seemed to lean in closer, their branches creaking in the breeze. The path she followed was narrow, the earth soft beneath her boots, and the further she went, the quieter it became. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for her to discover whatever it was she was meant to find. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, she reached the old mill. The building was weathered, its wood gray and splintered from years of neglect. The once thriving water wheel that had powered the mill was now still, its large blades half submerged in the river's edge. The water flowed around it, the current steady and calm, as if unaware of the history that had unfolded here. Eleanor approached the mill cautiously, her eyes scanning the structure for any sign of the code's hidden clues. She knew this place well, but it felt different now. There was a sense of urgency in the air, a palpable energy that made her heart race. She circled the building, looking for any markings, symbols, or hidden compartments. It wasn't long before she found something, an old wooden door on the far side of the mill, partially obscured by vines and moss. With a mixture of excitement and trepidation, Eleanor pushed the door open. The inside of the mill was dark, the only light coming from the small cracks in the walls. She could hear the sound of the river outside, the constant rush of water that seemed to fill the space with an eerie rhythm. The air was thick with dust and the smell of rotting wood, but Eleanor wasn't deterred. She had come this far, and she wasn't about to stop now. Inside, the mill's machinery lay dormant, covered in layers of dirt and grime. Eleanor moved carefully, her footsteps slow and deliberate as she searched the room. It wasn't long before she spotted something out of place, a strange symbol carved into the wall near the far corner of the mill. It was small, almost unnoticeable, but unmistakable once she saw it. It was the same symbol that had appeared in the journal, the map, and the notebook Clara had shown her. The key to the code. Her pulse quickened as she stepped closer to the symbol. It was etched deep into the wood, and upon closer inspection she noticed that there was a small indentation in the center. It looked like it could be a button of sorts, something that might trigger a mechanism hidden within the walls. Eleanor hesitated for only a moment before pressing the button. At first, nothing happened. Then, with a faint creak, a section of the wall slid open, revealing a small compartment hidden behind the mill's machinery. Inside the compartment, there was a single object, a weathered, leather-bound book. With trembling hands, Eleanor pulled the book from its hiding place. The cover was cracked and worn, and the pages inside were yellowed with age. But the book felt strangely familiar, as if it had been waiting for her. She opened it carefully, and as she scanned the pages, her heart skipped a beat. There, in the center of the book, was a series of symbols she recognized from the notebook Clara had shown her. But this time, they were accompanied by a new set of instructions. The instructions were written in a cryptic, almost poetic language, but Eleanor could make sense of it. The symbols were part of the final piece of the code, the missing section that would unlock the vault. She read through the instructions carefully, committing them to memory, but just as she was about to close the book, something caught her eye. A small note written in the margin of one of the pages. It read, "Beware, for the path you walk is one of great danger. The vault is not just a treasure, it is a test of your soul. Do not let greed cloud your judgment." Eleanor's hands trembled as she closed the book and tucked it into her bag. The warning was clear. The vault wasn't just about unlocking a physical door. It was a test, a trial that would challenge her in ways she couldn't yet understand. With the book in hand, Eleanor made her way out of the mill and back onto the path that led through the woods. Her mind raced as she thought about what came next. The first piece of the puzzle was in her possession, but there were still 3 more locations to visit, each one potentially holding the key to the final code. The sun was beginning to set as she made her way back into town. She felt the weight of the book in her bag, the burden of the knowledge it contained, and the responsibility of what it meant. The vault was closer than ever, but so was the danger that lurked in the shadows. The next location on Clara's map was the chapel on the hill. Eleanor knew it well. She had visited it many times over the years, but never thought much of its history. The chapel was small, humble even, but it had always been a place of peace for the townspeople. It was hard to imagine that something so sacred could be linked to the vault, but Clara had said it was one of the places to visit. She had no choice but to follow the map. The chapel was located at the highest point in Oak Ridge, offering a breathtaking view of the town below. As Eleanor climbed the steep path that led to the chapel, she could feel the weight of her task growing heavier with each step. She wasn't just uncovering the secrets of Oak Ridge anymore. She was about to uncover the truth about herself. What kind of person was she? What would she do with the power that lay hidden in the vault? When she reached the chapel, the doors were slightly ajar, creaking softly in the wind. Eleanor pushed them open, stepping inside. The air was cool and the smell of incense and old wood filled the space. The chapel was empty, save for a few candles flickering in the dim light. Eleanor walked down the center aisle, her footsteps echoing in the silence. The stained glass windows cast colorful patterns on the floor, but she didn't stop to admire the beauty of it. She had come for something else. The vault, the code, the truth. At the altar, she noticed something unusual. A small plaque embedded into the stone floor, partially obscured by dust and debris. As she knelt down to examine it, she saw that the plaque was inscribed with the same symbol she had seen at the mill. The symbol was worn but still recognizable. Without thinking, Eleanor reached out and touched the plaque. A low hum filled the air and the floor beneath her shifted. Slowly, a hidden compartment opened up, revealing a small ornate box. Eleanor's heart raced as she lifted the box from its resting place. Inside the box was another piece of the puzzle, a small, intricately carved stone with a series of symbols etched into its surface. Eleanor held it carefully, studying the symbols. They were part of the final code, and she could feel that she was getting closer. With the stone in hand, she knew that the vault was now within reach. But as she turned to leave the chapel, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her. The air seemed colder, heavier, as if the very walls of the chapel were closing in around her. Eleanor stepped out into the fading light of the evening, feeling the weight of the journey ahead. The vault was closer than ever, but so was the danger. Eleanor stood at the base of the hill, the weight of the stone in her hand a constant reminder of the task ahead. The sun had set behind the mountains, casting the sky in a pale orange glow, and the cool evening air wrapped itself around her like a cloak. The chapel, now just a silhouette in the distance, seemed to hold a secret of its own, a secret that only those willing to face the darkness of Oak Ridge's past would ever understand. Her mind raced with the symbols she had uncovered, the code, the vault, and the stone in her pocket. Each piece was bringing her closer to something monumental, but also to something deeply unsettling. The warnings in the books, the cryptic messages from Clara, they all seemed to point to one undeniable truth. Unlocking the vault wasn't just about uncovering secrets. It was about making a choice that would shape the future of Oak Ridge and maybe even the world. The third location on Clara's map was deep in the forest, where the ancient oak tree stood. Eleanor had always felt a strange pull toward the tree, even as a child. There was something about its twisted branches, its roots that seemed to reach out of the earth like fingers, that made her feel as though the tree was alive in a way that no other living thing was. The forest was quiet now, the sounds of the birds and the wind having faded as the day turned into night. Eleanor walked carefully, the ground beneath her feet soft and uneven. The path through the woods was narrow and winding, and as she ventured further into the trees, she felt as if she were stepping deeper into the past, into a world that had long since been forgotten. When she finally reached the oak tree, she stood there for a moment, gazing up at its towering presence. The tree was massive, its trunk wide and gnarled, its branches stretching high above her, casting long shadows across the ground. The air around it was thick with the scent of earth and decay, and for a moment Eleanor felt as though the tree was watching her, waiting for her to make the next move. She stepped closer, her hand brushing the rough bark of the tree, feeling the vibrations of the ancient wood beneath her fingertips. As she circled the trunk, her eyes caught sight of something unusual, a small, almost invisible crack in the bark just above the ground. It was barely noticeable, but Eleanor's instincts told her that it was important. She pressed her hand against the crack, and to her surprise the bark shifted, revealing a hidden compartment. Her heart raced as she pulled open the compartment. Inside was another object, this time a small wooden box intricately carved with the same symbol she had seen in the mill and the chapel. The box was heavy in her hands, and she could feel the weight of it as though it contained something more than just wood and carvings. Eleanor opened the box carefully, her fingers trembling. Inside was a key, a simple metal key worn with age but unmistakably important. It was the final piece of the puzzle, the key to unlocking the vault. She stared at the key for a long moment, wondering what kind of power it held. What would it open? And what would happen once it was used? Her thoughts were interrupted by a rustling sound from behind her. She turned quickly, her heart skipping a beat, but there was nothing there. Only the whispering wind and the shadows of the trees. Eleanor shook her head, trying to clear her thoughts. She had to focus. The vault was close, but she still didn't know what awaited her once she unlocked it. She stuffed the key into her bag and turned to leave, but something caught her eye. A figure standing in the distance just beyond the tree line. It was a man, tall and cloaked in shadow. Eleanor's breath caught in her throat, and for a moment she stood frozen, unsure of what to do. The figure remained still, watching her intently. "Who are you?" Eleanor called out, her voice trembling. The figure didn't respond. Instead, he stepped forward, his movements slow and deliberate. As he drew closer, Eleanor could see his face, a weathered gray expression with piercing eyes that seemed to see right through her. He was dressed in old, tattered clothes, as though he had been living in the woods for years. "I know what you seek," the man said, his voice gravelly and low. "You think you can unlock the vault, but there are consequences. You don't understand what you're dealing with." Eleanor took a step back, her heart racing. What do you mean? Who are you? The man's eyes darkened. I've seen others come before you. They were just like you, curious, determined, wanting to change the world. But the vault, it doesn't work the way you think. You don't know the power you're trying to unleash. Eleanor's grip tightened around her bag. I have to know. I have to finish this. The man shook his head slowly. You think you're ready, but you're not. The vault isn't just a place. It's a test, and you don't know the cost of unlocking it. Eleanor's pulse quickened. What's the cost? The man stepped forward again, his gaze never leaving hers. The vault will reveal the truth. It will show you things about yourself, about the world, things you may not want to know. And once it's open, there's no going back. You'll either be consumed by it or you'll destroy it. Eleanor's mind was spinning. The man's words were like a warning, but she couldn't turn back now. She had come so far. The vault was the key to unlocking everything. She couldn't stop. I have to see it, Eleanor said, her voice firm. I have to open it. The man's face softened as though he were pitying her. Then you're already lost. You'll never understand the consequences until it's too late. Without another word, the man turned and disappeared into the forest, leaving Eleanor standing alone beneath the oak tree. She didn't know whether the man's warning was real or just another part of the mystery, but one thing was certain. She couldn't stop now. The vault was waiting. The final piece of the code was in her hands. As Eleanor walked back toward the town, the weight of her decision pressed heavily on her chest. She had found the key. She had found the symbols, the instructions, and now all that was left was to unlock the vault. But as she walked, the doubts began to creep in. What if the man was right? What if she wasn't ready for what lay inside the vault? She couldn't answer those questions yet. She would have to face whatever was hidden in the vault, whatever power it contained and whatever consequences came with it. But for now, she had no choice but to keep moving forward. The fourth and final location on Clara's map was in the heart of Oak Ridge, the very place where the founders had gathered long ago to create the town. Eleanor knew where it was. It was the town square, the center of Oak Ridge, where the town hall stood proudly at the center, a symbol of the community's strength and unity. But now, the town square felt different. It was quieter than usual, the streets empty, the buildings dark. It was as though the entire town was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. Eleanor walked toward the town hall, her steps slow but determined. She had come this far. The vault was within her reach, and no matter what lay ahead, she knew she had to finish what she had started. As she approached the town hall, she felt a strange sense of foreboding. The building loomed before her, its stone walls cold and silent. She stepped through the front doors, and as she did, she heard the faintest sound, a creak, followed by the unmistakable sound of a door opening. The vault was waiting. Eleanor felt the weight of the key in her pocket as she stepped into the heart of Oak Ridge. The town square was eerily quiet, the familiar sounds of daily life now absent, as if everyone had sensed the impending change. The buildings that had once seemed so inviting now stood like silent sentinels watching her every move. The cobblestone streets, worn from years of use, seemed to lead her directly to the town hall, the building that had once been a symbol of unity for the people of Oak Ridge, but now felt like the doorway to something far darker. The doors of the town hall creaked as they opened, a sound that echoed in the stillness of the square. Eleanor stepped inside, her heart pounding in her chest. The air was thick with dust, and the faint smell of old wood and stone filled her senses. The grand hall, once bustling with activity, now felt abandoned, its high ceilings casting long shadows over the worn floors. But there was something else, something that Eleanor could not quite put her finger on. A presence, as if the building itself were holding its breath. She walked slowly, her footsteps echoing in the silence, until she reached the large staircase that led to the upper levels. At the top of the stairs, she paused, her eyes scanning the area. There, at the end of the corridor, stood a door, one that she had never noticed before, though she had spent so many years in this building as a child. It was old, the wood darkened by time, and the brass handle glinted faintly in the dim light. Her hand trembled as she reached for the door, the key heavy in her pocket. She had come so far. She had uncovered the clues, followed the map, and unlocked the secrets that had been buried for generations. Now, at the final threshold, she had only one choice: to open the door and face whatever lay inside. With a deep breath, Eleanor took the key from her pocket and inserted it into the lock. There was a soft click and the door creaked open, revealing a small room beyond. The room was dimly lit, its walls lined with shelves filled with old books and dusty relics of Oakridge's forgotten past. But in the center of the room stood a pedestal, and upon it, covered in velvet, was a large ancient chest. Eleanor's heart skipped a beat. This was it. This was the vault. She approached the chest slowly, the air growing colder as she drew nearer. The chest was massive, its wood worn and weathered, but it seemed to hum with an energy that she could feel in her bones. She reached out, her fingers brushing the surface of the chest. The moment her hand made contact, a low vibration ran through her, and she pulled her hand back, startled. A voice suddenly echoed in the room, low and resonant, as though it came from the very walls themselves. "You have come this far, Eleanor. But are you ready to face what lies within?" Eleanor froze, her heart pounding in her chest. The voice was not from a person but from something older, deeper. It was the vault speaking to her. She had heard about the power it held, but now standing before it, the weight of its presence was almost too much to bear. "I have to know," Eleanor said, her voice barely a whisper. "I have to open it." The voice seemed to respond with a faint chuckle. "You may think you are ready, but the vault does not simply reveal its secrets to anyone. It will test you, Eleanor. It will test your heart, your intentions. Only those worthy will be granted access." Eleanor's mind raced. She had already faced so many trials, so many obstacles, and yet this was different. This wasn't just about finding hidden knowledge. It was about confronting the deepest parts of herself. She had come this far and she couldn't back down now. With a deep breath, Eleanor stepped forward and placed her hands on the chest. The velvet covering was warm beneath her fingers, and she could feel the pulsing energy emanating from within. The chest seemed to respond to her touch, and with a soft groan, it slowly began to open. As the lid creaked back, Eleanor felt a rush of air, and the room was filled with a soft golden light. The light grew brighter, swirling around her like a cloud, and for a moment she was blinded by its intensity. She stepped back, shielding her eyes until the light began to fade, revealing what lay inside the chest. What she saw took her breath away. Inside the chest was a small, intricately carved stone tablet, glowing faintly with an otherworldly energy. The symbols on the tablet were unlike anything she had ever seen before, an ancient language, one that seemed to pulse with life, as though the tablet itself was alive. The air around it hummed, vibrating with power, and Eleanor felt an overwhelming sense of awe and fear wash over her. "This is it," she whispered to herself. "This is what I've been looking for." She reached out cautiously, her fingers trembling as she touched the surface of the tablet. The moment her hand made contact, a jolt of energy shot through her, and she stumbled back, gasping for air. Her vision blurred, and she felt a strange pulling sensation, as though the very fabric of reality was shifting around her. The room seemed to dissolve, and for a moment she was no longer standing in the town hall. Instead, she was surrounded by a vast expanse of swirling lights and shadows, an endless void that stretched out in every direction. Her heart pounded in her chest as she tried to make sense of what was happening. Then a figure appeared before her, a silhouette of a person, their features obscured by the shifting lights. The figure stepped forward, and Eleanor felt an overwhelming sense of recognition. It was as if she had known this person her entire life, though she could not remember their face. "You have come seeking the truth, Eleanor," the figure said, their voice both familiar and foreign at the same time. "But are you ready to face it?" Eleanor nodded, her voice steady despite the fear that gripped her heart. "I'm ready." The figure smiled, though it was a smile that seemed to hold both sorrow and understanding. "The truth you seek is not what you expect. The vault holds not just knowledge, but the power to shape reality itself. It has the ability to change the course of history, to alter the very fabric of existence. But it comes with a cost." Eleanor's mind raced. "What cost? What does it want from me?" The figure's expression grew serious. "It does not ask for your soul, Eleanor. It asks for something far more precious. It asks for your heart, your deepest desires, your most hidden fears. The vault does not give its power freely. It requires balance. If you open it, you must be willing to sacrifice something in return." Eleanor's chest tightened. "What do I have to give up?" The figure looked at her with deep, knowing eyes. "Only you can answer that. The vault will test you. It will reveal the truths you are not ready to face. And in the end, you will have to choose. the world or yourself. The words hung heavy in the air, and Eleanor felt a cold sweat break out on her skin. She had come so far, but now the true cost of unlocking the vault was becoming clear. It wasn't just about uncovering secrets, it was about making a choice that would change everything. "Are you willing to make that sacrifice?" the figure asked, their voice soft but insistent. Eleanor looked down at the glowing tablet in her hands, the symbols pulsing with an almost hypnotic rhythm. The power it held was undeniable, but she knew the truth of what was being asked of her. She had always thought that unlocking the vault would be the answer, that it would give her the knowledge she sought, the power to change her world. But now, standing at the threshold of everything, she realized that the vault's power came at a cost that she would have to decide if she was willing to pay. Her heart raced, and for a moment everything seemed to go quiet. The world around her felt distant, as though she were floating in a sea of uncertainty. Then, with a deep breath, she made her choice. "I'm ready," Eleanor said, her voice steady and unwavering. "I will face the truth." And with those words, the figure before her dissolved into the swirling lights, and the world around her began to shift once again.